Sandy and Nora's podcast.
Hey, Nora.
Hey, Sandy.
This has been a week. A lot of things have happened this week. A lot of not good things. Did you see 800 jobs at CBC? Like 600 layoffs, and like a total of like 800 jobs that will no longer exist anymore because they're not going to be hiring them.
Yeah.
It's like Pierre Poilievre's in office or something, but I don't recall that happening.
Yeah. It hasn't just been a week. My God. As I was getting ready to record this morning, I realized that all my stuff was still packed up from Winnipeg. It's like, holy smokes. I mean, we've gotten to see each other, but it's been almost, I guess, 3 weeks of not actually having recorded without an audience in front of us. And as you say, the things that have happened have been, I mean, it's been a lot. You're so right. It feels like Poilievre is already running politics. And CBC is one good example of that, but it also is like, just with the way that things are like the things that people are focusing on, like this ridiculous carbon tax stuff where the Conservatives just want to filibuster and talk nonstop about the carbon tax as if any average Canadian cares about that. And the Liberals are incapable of stopping it. And it's like, do you remember the NDP? Like, should we be putting them on milk cartons?
Oh my God. Tragic. And also, Pierre seems to have joined the world of film production. So, great. Good for him. Welcome, friend, I suppose. I thought to myself that I would watch the doc before we spoke today, his documentary on like Canadian housing or whatever. And I realized I have so many more important things to do. So I didn't do that. But eventually I will do that. No, I've just really, really been way too busy. And yes, you're right. It was very, very lovely to like see you and hang out last week. And actually then we did not record, which is kind of funny because I think maybe we had kind of plans to, but we didn't. We just like enjoyed LA together. And that was really nice. That was the highlight of my last 2 weeks.
Oh my God, me too. It was just like, it's one thing to talk to you every week in front of a live studio audience, but it was just like cool to hang out.
It was cool to hang out. And, fucking, what was that guy's name? Jeff, if you're listening, who was a server for us at a restaurant, who we decided that we should argue with on like every political topic that came to mind. I hope we made a listener and devoted socialist out of you, but I doubt it. But you're on the path, Jeff. You're on the way.
That's right. This is someone who is very sure about capitalism being good and, certain ideas in the United States. We had a lot of fun discussion points with him the other night. So, yeah, thanks to that, I guess. And, gosh, Sandy, we're at a moment now where there are more than 17,000 people dead in Gaza. Deaths are climbing. Israel's campaign against Gaza is ceaseless. It's horrifying. It's taking so many lives and pounding the infrastructure into the ground such that Palestinians will not really be able to return to live there. Certainly not anytime soon. I mean, soon being in the next couple of years. And Canada seems unmoved by these facts.
Yeah, it's absolutely stunning. I'm like surprised by my ability to continue to be surprised, but it's every time that I look at the news, it's near 1% of the population. 1% of the population who's been killed, if that hasn't happened already, because of course it's difficult to count in situations like these. And then you think about the horrific injuries, the disease that will lead to even more of that, like 1% of the population, and then 80% of the population displaced. Like, I can't even, like fathom what that means right now and long term. Like 80% of a population has been displaced. And it's just every week we're getting more and more horrifying news about something else that has been destroyed. This week, more schools, a med school, and then the images that Israel itself is putting out with pride. This week, of course, the images of men who had been stripped and made to sit and pose for photos. And Israel saying, hey, these are the Hamas fighters that we've gotten. And of course, people seeing these images and identifying these people as journalists, human rights workers, it's like beyond something that I could have imagined.
Yeah.
In the scale of horror. And it just continues relentlessly with Canada seemingly just fine with that. Just absolutely fine.
Yeah. So that's what we're talking about today. And we're talking about how journalists are failing to cover this. Journalists, especially, the owners of journalists, organizations or companies, media companies that will and will not allow certain things to be said. But we have a lot of people to thank. So, Sandy, would you like to hear some gratitude?
I would love that.
Okay. Thank you so much to everybody who's donated to the podcast for the first time or changed their donations. Remember, you can do that through patreon.com, Sandy and Nora, easy to find. Thank you this week, especially to Cole, Ms. J, Kevin, Hannah, Mark Anthony, Rebecca, Morgan, Maya, Aaron, Sarah, Yolanda, Jeffrey, Roy, Kristen, Stephanie, and Sam. Thank you so, so much.
Thank you so much. It's also been really weird, Nora. I mean, I think we're talking about media and media criticism as much as we can this week, but this stuff that's happening on campus, I just want to put a little bit of what is going on right now on that. Have you seen this stuff? It's just,
yeah.
I feel like I'm living in a different world than the political establishment. It's am I not seeing real life? Am I not hearing real life? It doesn't feel real. It's like you see students doing what students have often done, which is demanding justice for people, organizing everything they can, rallies, much like people are doing out in the street, just in their communities. And somehow that has turned into students are calling en masse around America, certainly, for the genocide of Jewish people. And it's like, if you could see me right now, you would see my head turning from side to side as I'm trying to make sense of how you go from one to the other. And it just, it doesn't matter that it's so absurd, that these two ideas are so fully unconnected. It doesn't matter. It gets its day in the American Congress. It results in presidents of institutions resigning because what? And we know, you and I have seen in Canada, on campuses, students facing all sorts of repression to their speech when we've engaged in discussions about all sorts of stuff, notably Palestinian human rights for years, with the institutions being just totally quite all right. With stopping us from talking about these things. And it's just I don't really understand why it feels as though people are living in a fully different world.
Well, yeah. I mean, when I saw Dr. Phil yesterday come out and condemn woke campuses, I was like, okay, we're in a different phase, I guess, right now. But then there's other stuff that then just doesn't get much mainstream attention. And perhaps it's for obvious reasons because mainstream attention is wholly supporting Israel. But did you see this thing a couple of weeks ago now out in British Columbia at UBC where someone had posted stickers all over campus that said, "I love Hamas," and attributed it to the Social Justice Center on campus? Did you see that?
Oh, yeah, I saw that. And then there was also a plane that was chartered with a message behind it. I can't remember exactly what the message was, but it was definitely anti-Semitic, and it had a Palestinian flag on it, and it was purchased again by a Zionist student group.
Yeah, well, actually, in the case of the BC thing, it was Hillel, the Student Group for Jewish Life on campus, and Hillel said, it was a third-party contractor. We didn't know what he was going to do. And it's so interesting. It's like that stuff's called Black Ops, and if you've ever been involved in Black Ops on campus, you know that there's a need to know, and you know that there is a wall between needing to know and not needing to know, and I know this, and Sandy, you know this, because we see these tactics directly.
Absolutely.
And then Hillel to say, oh my God, that was a contractor who went rogue. It's like, I'm sorry, Hillel hires someone who then puts up stickers that says, "I love Hamas," and attributes it to a group on campus that is pro-Palestinian. And then they claim that their third-party contractor just went rogue. Like, literally impossible. And the only reporting that I've seen on this is from the UBC, the student paper there. It's not mainstream news because I guess it's just a campus thing. But like, people actually could have been charged. People could have faced violence for those stickers, as it was attributed to I know that the Social Justice Center did receive a lot of threats and of horrible abuse because of this. And so it's like, here we have, these things happening on campus to make sure that radical support for Palestine, which has always existed on campus. If anything, it's been on campus. If it's been nowhere else within general society, if it's fallen off people's radars, it's always been an issue on campus. And people in power know that. And so, blowing up what's happening on campuses, this unbelievable attack on free speech and free expression, it's so predictable. And I'm glad that you mentioned it, because I hope that people who are on campus see this as a really important moment to organize and to reconstitute lost structures on campus. Because I know that, the student movement's in a bit of a shape right now. And this is a way that you can actually, make sure that there is structures and organizing capacity and oriented towards something that is so important. And, the administrations be damned. Like, what the fuck? They can get fucked. They can't stop students from doing what students should be doing, professors as well. And, solidarity to the folks at York who are also professors at York who are being targeted by their administration because of, protesting Heather Reisman and Indigo, the owner of Indigo bookstores. It's really, really, really gross. But that kind of struggle is so important.
Yeah. Oh God. Okay, so let's talk about what. I guess probably a lot of our listeners have seen some of the stuff coming from Jesse Brown, who was engaging with you directly on Twitter this week, all the way up to what's happening in the media or not happening in the media, in like big media, including what happened on CTV this week. I think that's like slowly proliferating. I'm surprised that more and more people haven't seen it, but we'll get you up to speed if you haven't seen it. But Nora, I mean, I know you've been like obviously particularly active online, as you are. And it's been kind of weird to watch how people respond to you, because it's this thing again to me, like like different worlds, like people are like living in different worlds. Like you say words that seem to mean things that words mean, and then the interpretations are taken completely elsewhere, and you're being attacked for essentially like saying fucking genocide is bad, and it's like, I'm just like, where are you at? Like, what is your analysis of like what the fuck is happening with people living in these different worlds and like truly, it seems not able to communicate over like a divide for one of the most urgent things that we're seeing in our lifetimes.
Wait, are you talking about Jesse Brown or are you talking about like people in general?
I started talking about Jesse Brown, but I'm also talking about people in general. And if you're saying that those two things are very separate, then sure, let's talk about them as separate things. But I do think that Jesse Brown is living in a different world, as are many other people.
Yeah. Okay. So I think that, let's be clear. Everything that has happened since October 7th is paradigm shifting, as we have said many, many times on this show. It's changing people's understanding of power. It's changing people's understanding of history, frankly. Certainly for me, I've been watching this and thinking so much that growing up, I imagined that the Holocaust was something that like people just didn't know about in 1944, like that there was people that had to escape from concentration camps and ring the alarm bell, and it was all very secret. And so no one really knew how bad it was until Allied soldiers got in and saw the camps and liberated the camps. That was kind of how I understood the Holocaust as a kid. And, my entire life has kind of been like gradually unlearning that it probably actually wasn't at all secret. And we know it wasn't secret. Of course, there's a lot of books about who knew what and how widespread the knowledge was. And here we are literally watching in real time the most horrific murder campaign of certainly, I think, my lifetime, probably a little bit longer than that. Maybe we can say in the post-war period, the ferocity and the swiftness with which Gaza has been pounded and people have been murdered really is unparalleled, or at least places itself up with some of the more significant massacres of the 20th century, perhaps we'll say in the post-World War II period. Though, I mean, you can also compare how fast and hard the attack in Gaza has been to other situations like the firebombing of Dresden, of how bad Cologne was pounded in World War II, and of course the nuclear bomb being dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And so we're in like that kind of world. And I don't know, like as a socialist, as someone who looks at World War II and instantly knows what side I am on, what side I would have been on, knows what my kind of people were experiencing, being targeted by Nazis, like socialists and communists were kind of targeted by the Nazis and fascists, Italy and Spain as well, of course. And
What?
Yeah. I mean, that kind of gets missed but, well, people act as if like, that Nazis were socialists, right? And so, like somehow this kind of line continues to exist. But I'm a socialist person. I live those politics. I breathe those politics. That is who I am. It's very, very easy to understand for me. I think that the understanding power in this situation, understanding who is oppressed in this situation is very, very fucking easy. You have a massacre that happened that killed somewhere between 1,000 and 1,200 people on a single day versus 62 days or 65 days, or maybe by the time you're listening, 67 days of this relentless campaign of murder where upwards of 20,000 people have been killed. Okay. Like those are very easy things. And yet somehow online, and let's not talk about Jesse Brown yet, because there is things specifically to say about him. But there are people online who are flooding my mentions to make me feel like I'm crazy and that this is not reality. Now, the reason why I want to talk about this separately is because I think that a lot of these people are not real. Almost every one of my tweets is being responded to 100 times, 200 times, 300 times. That's not normal. And the responses are nuts. Like I posted a picture of my kitchen last night and there's a clown's parade of people being like, oh, wow, you live in such a dump. Oh my God, you're poor. I didn't realize you're so poor. Ha ha. And it's just like, guys, it's just a picture of a fucking small area of a kitchen. Like there's literally nothing about it that's at all commentatable. But I have been targeted, and there's other people that have been targeted to be flooded by these messages all the time to make us feel crazy. And I think that is very, very interesting.
I mean, totally. And okay, I like desperately need people who see this stuff online to understand that this is happening. this happened in the post 2020 BLM backlash period too. And for some reason, people the some reason is anti-Blackness, but people could not put together that this onslaught of hate that we were getting was like not real. And so I hope that it's like more obvious now and that people are becoming like more media literate, because part of what is happening is that one, like there's this campaign to harass people who are trying to be on, there's like a political campaign to harass people and make them suffer whatever consequences they can bring to you for being on the right side of this issue, for being against genocide. And then the other thing that's happening is that people who are on the other side want to demonstrate that they have support because that they think that will encourage other people to support them. And so it's important for them in a campaign online where everyone is anonymous to make up people who think that the most rational thing to say, which is that genocide is bad, like God, is it, to make that absurd. It's like, it's Trump politics. It's just how this works. So yes, people need to understand that shit, a lot of it is not real, but the consequences sure are.
Yeah. And there's a really good example of that in the last couple of days. There's this user called Sarah from New West. Her name apparently is Sarah Segal. And she started coming at me out of nowhere, but not just on Twitter. She got into the Discord for Sandy and Nora, which, by the way, folks, yeah, we do have a Discord. It's not very active. You know what? I'll post the link to it so people can join and maybe have some conversations. But I got some messages from folks being like, oh my God, there's someone in the Discord who's talking about how you are supporting rape, right? And it's like, oh yeah, I wrote a whole book on feminism, and secretly, guys, I'm a big fan of rape. Like, there you go, big surprise ending in my life. And so this person, comes after almost every tweet that I write for about 24 hours or 48 hours, and is in the Discord and being annoying, but seemingly like a real person. I respond, to say that like, oh, another syphilitic troll. And then she's like, oh, you're saying that I'm a dirty Jewish person with disease. And I'm like, what the fuck? Oh my God, this doesn't make any sense. And lo and behold, the account blocks me and blocks every single person that follows me within 48 hours. It's flash in the pan. Here it is. Just some bot or some paid interaction to just bother me for a couple of days. And that was notable because it was so whoever's obviously trying to figure out this stuff, that was too obvious. that was not going to work. They'll come back with another account, I'm sure. And it is exactly that. It's just like, social media is not real life. It's a magnification or an amplification of what we see maybe in our day-to-day lives, but it's so manipulatable. And so in this situation where, Israel needs the support of some number of people in the West, they obviously have the total support of our political class. But they need to have some level of support of the people, because otherwise the people are like not going to stand for this. And so these are tactics that are going to be, this is the air war, right? We have to understand that. So it's annoying because it means that, like, for me, I'm just like constantly attacked, constantly attacked. And it makes me lash out, and I have to be very, very like aware of that. And I mean, I am to an extent, and then sometimes I lash out anyway, and it's like, fuck it. And part of that lashing out, this is a good segue, is into this whole thing with one publisher of Canadaland that I guess I'm watching my $300 a year that I make off of being on Canadaland vanish.
Oh, goodness. Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about this. Jesse Brown, last week, he published an editorial on Canadaland, outside of the typical Canadaland Monday show and the Canadaland Thursday show. And it was his response to a lot of criticism, very generous criticism at times, certainly from you, that he has gotten for being someone who he's taken on the mantle of media criticism in Canada, sometimes doing that quite well, sometimes failing. But, like it's on the whole, the Canadian media landscape is, as we know, quite paltry. And so it's been generally a positive thing to have Canada Land there to point out the everything from like inconsistencies to the really ugly shit that you can see in journalism in Canada. Except somehow in the last 2 months, Jesse hasn't been doing the greatest media criticism at all. And it's been quite stark and so obvious, from refusing to acknowledge on Canada Land the journalists who have been killed. Like it's been like more journalists who've been killed in Israel's onslaught than at a rate like never before seen. And like that doesn't get mention. Like it was terrible also that it didn't get a mention from the Canadian Association of Journalists. And like that typically would be something that Canada Land would mention, and it just like it wasn't there. Not to mention all of the ways that Israel is being discussed or not being discussed in Canadian media. Now, other media critical sources such as us, The Breach, The Maple, a lot of other independent media have been doing this, but it's been really weird to see Canada Land not do this. And so people rightly were like, what's going on? Everything from what's going on to, hey, Jesse, are you a Zionist? Is because what the fuck? And he published this editorial that, I mean, it's again this thing where you're like, wow, this person is living in another world, because they don't seem to understand what people are saying and the very, very legitimate critiques of this resource, Canada Land, and his role within it, and what it is not saying at this very, very crucial time in human history, has been received and thrown back as I'm talking about anti-Semitism and not about like the critiques. I mean, he's not responding to the critiques at all. It's just being received as anti-Semitism. And it's like, gosh, it continues to be so dangerous to conflate these things.
I know, talking to people, that there's a lot of frustration that Canada Land is not fulfilling its mandate right now. And, everything from Canadian Association of Journalists and the Canadian Journalists for Free Expression to organizations that supposedly stand for press freedom in this country. PEN Canada is another example. I mean, their statements were very, very bad. And like, Canada Land is literally the only place, and frankly, Jesse Brown is the only person with the stature in this country to actually figure out what is going on within these organizations that is stopping them from making these very important comments, right? Like at Canadian Association of Journalists, is it the president? Is it the board? Is anybody in the board agitating to be stronger? Is anyone threatening to quit? Like, what exactly is the fear in supporting press freedom and in condemning what Israel's doing, very clearly condemning what Israel's doing? Now, both organizations, it took them about 5 weeks to actually say something. Their statements were pretty freaking tepid. It definitely made me proud that I'm no longer a member of either organization. I mean, I've never been a member of the Canadian Association of Journalists, but I left CJFE a long time ago because they sucked. But, I've talked to many journalists who are like, what? Like, we need somebody to actually do this. And Canada Land has a newsroom. The funding is looking like it's drying up. I've seen a lot of people leaving their donations from Canada Land. A lot of people frustrated and sad about it too, because as you say, like, oftentimes the journalism is excellent, but it all goes back to Jesse. And I think that he is such a good example of somebody who interacts with left-wing politics from a theoretical perspective. This is not someone who's going to go to a rally. This is not someone who was motivated to be in the streets during Black Lives Matter. I mean, I assume, if I'm wrong, Jesse, I mean, you know how to reach me. Like, you can reach me. But this is not somebody that actually understands how power works in society, frankly. There's some levels of understanding, but the second that it hits him personally, there's really only two ethical choices that you have. One ethical choice is that you say, okay, like, this is the story, and I'm going to set aside my own personal opinions and experiences, and I'm going to let the newsroom do its thing, and I'm going to be involved in it. Or you leave for a little bit of time and say, I'm too wrapped up in this. My opinion is too strong on this, and I'm out. And it's actually very illuminating, because you can hear in the journalism that kind of belief that those of us who are activists and those of us who are involved in work on the ground, that we can never be neutral. Like, there was always this kind of like, okay, yeah, sure, you're a journalist, but like also an activist, right? And I certainly always felt that. I mean, maybe a little bit less because I've been on the show so much, but certainly in the beginning, it felt like, okay, there's journalists, and there's objective, like hard hitting real journalists. And then there might be journalists that are also kind of less journalisty because they're involved in these movements. And now I see that probably it was stemming from like the fact that he himself cannot look at a situation with any level of non-bias, with any level of fairness, when it's directly involving him, when he has very, very strong opinions. And so as someone that is always navigating that, I think is really interesting. And then, of course, he took a swipe at me on the weekend over a set of tweets that are from like last April that have been so roundly used by people like Jonathan Kay and Warren Kinsella and all these like shit hawks that need to fuck right off. And because they'd already come at me, I actually have already written an article about the tweets and about what they're saying and about why these men are so interested in trying to destroy me. But I got to be honest, I was a bit surprised to see Jesse do that. And I got to also say I was pretty heartwarmed to see so many people saying like, are you okay? What the fuck is going on with you? And why would you go after Nora of all fucking people?
Yeah. I don't know, like for people who are feeling pretty disappointed with Canada Land right now, I don't really know what to tell you, but to continue to consume independent media from other sources. I mean, continue to listen to like Commons and the other stuff on Canada Land that Canada Land produces. But I mean, it's fair to be frustrated at Canada Land, and there are other sources where you can take a look at some really good critical media. I mean, I think what Jesse Brown is like trying to do, Ezra Klein does pretty well. So if you're interested in listening to some critique from the perspective of someone who feels deeply touched and particularly embedded in everything, and is talking from a Jewish perspective, I would consider taking a listen to Ezra Klein's podcast. It's been pretty good. So CTV. Whoa. Did you see what happened? I can't remember if I saw it live or not now. Like it's just been like a little bit of a blur of a week. And I'm in Toronto just for a very quick moment. And so it was a broadcast on CTV News, which is Canada's most watched news broadcast, and it was just talking about the beginning of Hanukkah and the lighting of a large public menorah, and talking about like what Hanukkah means to the Jewish community and so on. And it seems as though a producer did something in the background, because in the midst of this discussion about one of the most crucial holidays of the Jewish faith, images of what is happening in Gaza started to appear on the screen. I suppose like maybe CTV tried to like make it better by cutting the sound, but somehow that made it worse. And it goes on for as someone who does media and has produced media, like way too long. It's like, I don't know what was going on in the background for someone to like figure this out. They eventually cut back to the newsroom, and the newsroom says, "Oh, there's been some technical difficulty with a mic," and then they move on. And sometime later, they apologize for having some technical difficulties that resulted in some images of, I think they called it the war in the Middle East, appearing on screen during their Hanukkah coverage.
Yeah.
Whoa.
So, yeah, I watched that as someone, who went to journalism school and knows how to make, those videos. And there's two possibilities. One is that someone made a mistake. Someone accidentally dumped the wrong tape into that segment. They were obviously trying to get pre-tape of the ceremony setting up, of, I assume, images of like, staging getting put up or the menorah itself being constructed or whatever, and instead is images of Israel bounding Gaza. So either that was a mistake, and then you can say, well, who is making the mistake to associate this Jewish celebration with Israel? That's anti-Semitic. That's one track. The other track is it was a protest, and that someone intentionally did it. And I don't think we'll probably ever know. Certainly CTV has...
I think we'll know eventually. What? You don't think we'll ever know? I think we'll know eventually.
We'll do a little bet on that one. I bet you that it doesn't come out. CTV has been in the news, the breach specifically, looking at their biased coverage. And so the protest theory is actually, a pretty strong one. They've fired one journalist out east for being too pro-Palestinian. They have been very, very heavily relying on official lines from the IDF and from the Israeli government on what's happening. They have not promoted voices of Gazans or Palestinians. We talked about this already. And then CTV also just got in a lot of trouble from groups like the Simon Wiesenthal Center and CIJA, the Center for Israel and Jewish Affairs in Canada, a group that in their name conflates the two. So, of course, there's some confusion on when you are allowed and when you're not allowed to conflate the two. And they were very angry that Omar Sachedina, who's one of the national anchors, called a pro-Israel rally a rally that supported the war. And that had just happened. And so for me, I was like, oh, wow, CTV at least was honest in saying that this pro-Israel rally is a pro-war rally. Obviously, it's fucking obvious. But in classic CIJA style, they then also mixed anti-Semitism in it. So they were like, what? It's actually anti-Semitic to say that it's pro-war. It's like, you're literally wearing the flags of a nation that has just obliterated another nation. Like, this is not actually complicated stuff here. And then a couple of days later, this happens with the menorah lighting tape. So, yeah, I don't know, going back to Jesse Brown, he's like, well, something's going on internally at CTV. People should talk to me. I don't imagine anybody is going to feel comfortable talking to that guy right now if they are not sympathetic to Israel. But it is going to be interesting to see if any information does come out about that. Though also, just a final kind of comment from me on this, like, you can't say that this pro-Israel event is pro-war. This is another way that people in power have been torquing the message. Because of course you can say that when they are literally wrapping themselves in the flag of Israel and there's signs that say we support Israel. I mean, what the fuck else can it be? And Sandy, did you see this whole business with the mayor of Calgary refusing to go to the menorah lighting ceremony there?
Yeah, I did.
I find this all very fascinating because, the mayor of Calgary, she's like, I look forward to this event every year, but this year I can't go because it's been turned into a political thing. It's a bit of a weaselly way to talk about it because it's not just that it's been turned into a political thing. It's that the menorah lighting at Calgary, the poster, literally says supporting Israel in the advertisement. Now, Jen Gerson has been working overtime to make this a disgusting decision from a public official. And, seeing people like Don Martin from CTV engaging with Jen Gerson saying like, yes, this is a disgusting decision. Your analysis, Jen, is right. This is all very crazy making. It's like, I'm sorry, if you're going to say that your menorah lighting ceremony is in support of Israel, then people have every fucking right to say that they will not go because they do not support what Israel's doing. Because Israel has just murdered 20,000 people, just leveled Gaza, just destroyed all the civil infrastructure, destroyed mosques, destroyed ancient fucking churches and universities. And they are like, we have to be so clear when we're saying this. And then you have a shit rat like Jen Gerson creating the intellectual underpinnings of why a decision like that from the mayor of Calgary is disgusting and is anti-Semitic and how dare she and why would she do this and all this idiotic bullshit Zionist that needs to fucking shut up.
Yeah, I think that the final thing that I want to talk about today that has happened in the last couple of weeks that's been really, really fucking disgusting is the way that people have been weaponizing rape as a justification for genocide. It is so fucking disgusting. And it has some parallels to like an experience of, you know, being a Black woman and where you see rape only really matter when you're discussing the experience of white women. And then, of course, when we see sexual violence that is experienced by other communities, it's not taken up with the same type of seriousness. And then putting that sort of lens on this situation, I'm like, gosh, it's war. Yeah. In every war, rape is a tool. Okay. And it's a tool on either side. It is absolutely the case that Palestinians are experiencing sexual violence and rape. And so to be talking about rape in a way that is only in a utilitarian way to justify the mass murder of a percentage of a population, like, I can't think of anything more vile. Like, what is wrong with people?
I wrote about this on my Substack, so people should check that out. And I think that it's as crass as this is an airtight argument. You know, the violation of women is the most disgusting thing that can happen. Certainly, you know, this is a conversation that you and I had actually last week.
That's right.
Off the air of how not just the violation of white women, but the violation of white women at the hands of Black and brown men. And that is the full underpinning of the justification for the continued destruction of Gaza. You know, there have been, as I said, 65 days or so of this relentless horror. And Israel needs the world to think that October 7th was worse than the sum total of 65 days of concerted campaigns to destroy and wipe Gaza off the map. And so the hostage stuff doesn't exactly work because a lot of the hostages have been released and they weren't killed. The memory of October 7th doesn't exactly work because the data is like still changing, and a lot of the people who were killed were soldiers, right? Which then becomes, okay, well, that's a difficult thing because that's an act of war and you kill soldiers, blah, blah, blah. But then also some of them were killed by the IDF themselves. Okay, that's complicated too. I mean, all that stuff can be justified and can be explained in a way that doesn't at all diminish the horror of October 7th, except that when you're using October 7th as the justification for genocide, it gets a little bit more complicated. So we've run the gamut on all of those issues. Now let's talk about sexual violence. And that's going to be the way that we're going to justify what's happening is because of these brutal and horrific rapes. And you know, as you say, it's vile. It's also so typical. It's so typical because it is being used then to say, oh, you're a fake feminist. Oh, you're not a real, of course, you know, you're anti-Semitic because you apparently care about rape, except when it happens to Israeli women, right? As if, you know, not everybody was Jewish in that attack either. But anyway, that's a whole other thing. I don't know if you saw Melanie Joly, our foreign affairs minister, saying that she believes Israeli women.
Oh my God. No, I did not see that.
Yeah.
So what happened to the other women? What about the other women? It's just Israeli women? Got it.
She only believes them. She only believes them.
Saying the quiet part out loud. Got it. Only some women matter here. Okay. Fuck.
Exactly. And again, without a critical media ecosystem, like none of this stuff gets challenged. It just gets allowed to float out there in the ether and be there. I want to shout out Jeremy Appel. He's got a great piece in the Maple about Jewish news services that are pretty much like amplifying uncritically the voice of the IDF and of Israeli officials. They are appearing in post-media papers all across Canada as like fair comment, which is a really bad, like basically it's war propaganda being just printed directly in the largest newspaper chain in Canada. Super not good stuff. But things are going to get worse. They're going to get worse until Israel is stopped. And that means that they're going to get worse for those of us who are critics of this. And so it's like, all I can say is like, buckle up, because like we haven't seen anything yet. Israel doesn't seem like they're at all interested in stopping this campaign of destruction and murder. And so where does that leave us?
One final note is it's like, there is no justification for any of this. But I mean, for feminists taking a look at what's happening, certainly bombing the hell out of hostages. Like, if you care about the hostages, using them as justification with this discussion of rape and sexual violence, like you can't then be like, yeah, it is now justified for me to bomb them and kill them, because that's what is happening. Like, there is no attempt right now to protect anyone in this war, and we have to be smarter than the rhetoric that is being lobbed at us, that is coming from literally a fucking different world. It's like, if that rhetoric is true, we are living in a different world. And it's not true. It's just not true. And we have to be literate in these times of what is happening in our media and what's happening in the political establishment, what's happening on social media. And we have to continue to stay the course, because all of this stuff that's happening that seems bizarre is happening because there needs to be some sort of counter to what is fucking popular, which is that a genocide is happening. And it can't be a counter that justifies genocide, because, people won't admit that that is what they are giving credence to, that is what they are supporting. They're not going to admit that. They're not going to make that part of their legacy. So what they have to do is make the truth untrue. And that's why it feels so weird. But part of that means is that what we are doing on the ground is working. There are more critical media coming out from established sources. We're seeing more people resign. We're seeing more in established spaces. And that's because of all the people who have been out on the streets, who have been doing what they can from where they are to make an impact. It's not fast enough, I know, and it's not happening in all of the ways that it could be happening, and it's disgusting. But we have to continue to do what we are doing, what we can do from where we are, because it is working, and the proof is in all of the outrageous weirdness that we're seeing from people who somehow support genocide.